I always thought life had finally balanced itself out for me. After years of struggling with jobs that barely paid the rent, nights spent eating ramen noodles, and wondering if I'd ever climb out of that endless cycle of debt, I'd finally landed in a place I could call stable. I had a job that didn't just cover the bills, but gave me some room to breathe, a small two-bedroom apartment that felt more like home than any place I'd lived in before, and a woman who I believed was the love of my life. Her name was Claire. We met in the least romantic way possible standing in line at a coffee shop, both irritated that the barista had mixed up orders. She had this way of looking at me with amused frustration, like she already knew I was going to be a problem in her life, but wasn't sure if that was a good or bad thing. Over time, it became clear she was a little of both. Claire was sharp, quick-witted, and stubborn, the kind of person who didn't bend easily, and for a while, that made me admire her even more. Things between us escalated quickly. Within a year, we were living together, splitting the rent, arguing over silly things like how much space her shoes took in the closet, and then making up in ways that reminded me why I couldn't picture myself without her. Friends would tease me about how whipped I was, but I didn't care. She wasn't just my girlfriend, she was my anchor. I trusted her in a way I'd never trusted anyone before. But looking back now, the signs were there from the beginning, small moments that I brushed off as nothing. But in hindsight, they were like cracks forming in the foundation of something I thought was solid. Claire was secretive with her phone. Not constantly, not in the obvious ways, but every so often, she'd tilt the screen away from me or smile at a message and say it was just a friend. I'd tease her about hiding her mysterious lover, and she'd laugh it off, telling me I was paranoid. I believed her, or maybe I just wanted to. It wasn't until my childhood friend Mark re-entered my life that things began to change. Mark and I had known each other since middle school. We'd grown up in the same neighborhood, shared the same love for basketball, and had each other's backs through more fights than I could count. Life had pulled us in different directions. He dropped out of college, bounced between odd jobs, and spent a lot of his time chasing women and parties. But whenever he needed me, I was there. That's just the kind of bond we had. One night, he called me out of the blue, his voice slurred and desperate. He'd lost his place after getting into a fight with his landlord, had nowhere else to go, and asked if he could crash with me for a while. Claire wasn't thrilled about the idea, but I convinced her it was temporary, that Mark just needed to get back on his feet. I thought it would be fine. After all, he was my brother in everything but blood. At first, everything seemed normal. Mark helped out around the apartment, made jokes that lightened the mood, and even seemed to get along with Claire, despite her initial hesitation. I thought maybe having him around would be good for us. But then I noticed how their conversation started stretching longer, how Claire laughed at his jokes in ways I hadn't seen in months, how Mark's eyes lingered on her just a fraction too long when he thought I wasn't looking. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was imagining things. These were two people I loved, two people who had no reason to betray me. I told myself trust was a cornerstone of every relationship, and if I started doubting them, I'd be poisoning everything we'd built. But then came the night I woke up at 2 a.m. to an empty bed. Claire wasn't beside me. I figured she'd gone to the kitchen for water. But when I got up and walked out, I found the living room empty too. That's when I heard the muffled laughter coming from the balcony. I opened the sliding door, and there they were, Claire and Mark sitting close, whispering like teenagers hiding a secret. When they saw me, they jumped apart, their excuses clumsy and unconvincing. Claire claimed they were just talking, that she couldn't sleep, that I was blowing things out of proportion. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. But something in my gut twisted, something that told me the cracks in my life were widening into a chasm I couldn't ignore. That night, I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, while the sound of her breathing felt foreign, almost rehearsed. And for the first time since we met, I wondered if the woman I loved was hiding something I wasn't ready to face. The morning after that balcony scene, I tried to act like nothing had happened. I told myself I was overthinking, that I caught them in an innocent moment, and that my mind was twisting it into something worse. But no matter how hard I tried to push it aside, the image of the two of them whispering in the dark clung to me like a stain I couldn't scrub out. Claire noticed my silence over breakfast. She asked me what was wrong, her tone casual but her eyes sharp, watching me carefully. I shrugged it off and said I hadn't slept well. She didn't push, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Mark, on the other hand, acted as if nothing unusual had happened. He cracked jokes, asked if I wanted to shoot some hoops later, and carried on like the world was perfectly fine. That only made me more suspicious. Days turned into weeks, and I began noticing more subtle things. Claire started staying later at work. She claimed deadlines were piling up, that her boss was relentless. Normally, I would have believed her, but now every excuse felt like another brick in a wall she was building between us. Mark seemed to be at the apartment more than usual, even when he said he had errands to run. Sometimes, I'd come home early and find him sitting on the couch, phone in hand, looking startled when I walked in, like I'd caught him in the middle of something he didn't want me to see. The worst part was the phone. Claire became glued to hers, always flipping it face down when I entered the room, smiling at messages she claimed were from friends I didn't know. One night, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. My chest tightened, my fingers hovering over it. I wanted to look. God, I wanted to know. But something inside me hesitated. I told myself that if I stooped to snooping, I'd already lost. I put it back down before the screen went dark, but that moment gnawed at me. What was I so afraid of finding? It wasn't long before small inconsistencies started piling up. Claire said she had a late meeting, but Mark was also gone during those hours. She told me she was grabbing drinks with co-workers, yet came home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. Mark claimed he was crashing at a friend's place one night, but left his jacket draped over the back of our couch, his wallet still in the pocket. I tried to convince myself it was coincidence. That's what I told myself until the night I came home earlier than expected. The apartment was dark, except for the soft glow coming from Claire's bedroom lamp. I called out her name, but there was no answer. I pushed the door open and froze. Claire was lying on the bed, dressed casually, phone in her hand, but her startled expression gave her away. She wasn't expecting me home that soon. "Where's Mark?" I asked, the words coming out sharper than I intended. She blinked, then laughed nervously. I don't know why, but her eyes flickered toward the balcony for just a fraction of a second. My heart pounded as I stepped past her and yanked open the sliding door. Empty, but the air smelled faintly of cigarettes, and Mark was the only one who smoked. I turned back to her, and she was already on her feet, defensive, arms crossed. "You don't trust me," she snapped. And in that moment, I realized she was right. I didn't. Not anymore. That night, I lay in bed next to her, the silence between us louder than any argument. Every creak of the apartment made me wonder if Mark was slipping in and out when I wasn't looking. Every vibration of her phone felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. It was driving me insane. I knew I couldn't keep living in suspicion, in this constant state of doubt and paranoia. I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. And as much as I wanted to believe in the woman I loved and the brother I trusted, a part of me already knew what I was going to find. I couldn't shake the feeling anymore. It was like a shadow following me everywhere, whispering that I was being played for a fool. Every time Claire smiled at me, I wondered if she was remembering something Mark had said. Every time Mark clapped me on the back and called me bro, I questioned if he was mocking me behind my back. I told myself I'd wait, that if I was patient, the truth would show itself. But patience was tearing me apart. I stopped sleeping properly. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, listening for the creak of footsteps in the apartment. Sometimes I thought I heard whispers, faint and low. But when I got up, the place would be quiet, Claire sound asleep beside me. One night, I finally snapped. I was sitting on the couch pretending to watch TV when Claire's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She was in the shower, steam spilling out from the cracked bathroom door. My pulse hammered as I stared at the glowing screen. It wasn't locked, just a simple swipe to open. My hand trembled as I picked it up. The first thing I saw was a string of messages. From Mark. I scrolled, my eyes burning, my chest tightening with every word. They weren't innocent. Not even close. Flirty jokes. Late-night confessions. Her telling him she couldn't wait to see him. Him telling her how good last night felt. I stopped breathing. My vision blurred as I read the messages over and over again, each one confirming the nightmare I had tried so hard to deny. The sound of water shutting off snapped me back to reality. I locked the phone and placed it exactly where it had been. Claire walked out, towel wrapped around her hair, smiling like nothing was wrong. My hands clenched so tight, I thought I might break the remote I was holding. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. My body was screaming to demand answers, to throw the truth in her face, but my mind told me to wait. If I exploded too soon, she'd deny it, twist it, maybe even make me feel like I was the crazy one. No, I needed something undeniable. Proof so strong that neither she nor Mark could talk their way out of it. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. A week later, Claire told me she was staying late at work again. This time, I didn't just sit at home stewing in suspicion. I got in my car and drove to her office. The parking lot was half empty, the building's windows mostly dark, but her car wasn't there. My stomach dropped. I drove around for almost an hour, not sure what I was even looking for, until I saw it, parked near a cheap motel on the edge of town. Her car, right there in plain sight, next to another car I recognized instantly, Mark's. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel as I parked a block away. I walked toward the motel, my chest tight, my breath shallow. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I got close enough, I saw them. Through the thin curtains of a ground floor room, their silhouettes moved together, laughing, touching, oblivious to the fact that the world outside was caving in on me. For a moment, I stood frozen, staring at the window like maybe I was hallucinating. But the truth was undeniable. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. My girlfriend, my brother, together. I don't remember walking back to my car. I don't remember starting the engine. All I remember is a hollow roar in my ears, like the sound of my entire life collapsing. That night, I sat alone in the dark, replaying everything in my head. Every laugh they'd shared, every excuse she'd given me. Every time he called me bro, I felt stupid, betrayed, broken. But under all that pain, something else began to rise inside me. A cold, sharp determination. If they thought they could destroy me behind my back, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, my mind racing, my body shaking between rage and disbelief. Every memory I had of Claire, every moment I thought was special, now felt tainted. Every time Mark had stood by my side, every word of loyalty he'd ever spoken, it was all poison now. By the time morning came, I'd already made my decision. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep living in the shadows of suspicion. I needed to face them both. Claire came home later than usual that evening. She walked in casually, her smile too perfect, like she practiced in the car before opening the door. I sat on the couch, waiting. She kissed my cheek, but I didn't respond. I just looked at her. She froze for a second, sensing something off. "We need to talk," I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. It was low, steady, almost calm, but beneath it was a storm ready to tear everything apart. She laughed nervously. "What about?" I pulled out her phone. I had unlocked it earlier, taken screenshots of messages, and sent them to myself. I showed her the screen. Her face drained of color in an instant. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "Don't lie," I said. "Not this time." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. She stammered. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to. I swear." I felt my chest tighten, my anger rising, but before I could respond, there was a knock on the door. It was Mark. The sight of him standing there, relaxed as if nothing had happened, was enough to make my blood boil. I grabbed him by the collar before he could even step inside and slammed him against the wall. His eyes went wide, and for once, I saw fear in them. "You think I would find out?" I spat. My fists trembled with the urge to break him right there. Claire screamed behind me, begging me to stop, but I wasn't listening. Mark tried to talk, tried to explain, but his words were a blur. All I could see was the image of him with her in that motel room. Finally, he pushed me back, his own anger flaring. "You don't understand," he shouted. "She came to me. You were too busy with work, too busy with your own life. She needed someone. You weren't there." The words cut deep, sharper than any knife. Claire cried harder, covering her face, and I felt the ground beneath me collapse. My own brother, the person I trusted more than anyone, blaming me for his betrayal. I stood there, my chest heaving, my fist clenched, staring at the two of them. I wanted to scream, to destroy everything in that room, but instead I felt this cold clarity settle over me. "You deserve each other," I said finally, my voice flat. "But don't you dare think you'll ever have me in your lives again." I walked out, slamming the door behind me, leaving them both in their mess. My hands were shaking, my eyes burning, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The betrayal had shattered me, but what came next, that was going to define the rest of my life. For a few days after that night, I felt like I was walking through a fog. I'd moved into a cheap motel on the other side of town, leaving everything behind. My apartment, my furniture, the life I thought I had, it was all tainted now. I couldn't stand to breathe the same air they had polluted with their lies. But silence is its own kind of torture. Lying on a stiff mattress in a room that smelled of cigarette smoke and mildew, I replayed the confrontation over and over. Claire's tearful excuses, Mark's angry justifications, the way my hands had trembled with rage. And every time I thought I was starting to calm down, I remembered the motel window, their silhouettes tangled together, and the fury came flooding back. I thought cutting them off would give me peace, but it didn't. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, it was Claire long messages begging me to talk, saying she'd made a mistake, that she loved me, that she could fix this if I just gave her a chance. Then came the calls. I ignored them all, but the silence that followed wasn't better. It left me with too much space to think, too much room for the pain to grow. Then came Mark. He showed up at the motel one night, pounding on my door. I didn't want to see him, didn't want to hear his voice, but his shouting drew attention from the other guests, so I let him in just to shut him up. He looked rough, eyes bloodshot, jaw tight, like he hadn't slept in days. For a moment, I almost saw the old Mark, my brother in everything but blood, but then he opened his mouth, and all I heard was betrayal. "You don't get it," he said, pacing the small room. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. She came to me when you weren't there for her. We didn't plan it. It just happened." I clenched my fists, forcing myself not to explode again. "You could have said no," I said. "You could have respected me. You didn't." He stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes desperate. "I love her, man. I didn't mean for it to go this far, but I can't deny it anymore. I love her." The words hit harder than any punch. He wasn't sorry. Not really. He wasn't here to apologize. He was here to justify himself, to tell me he had taken the woman I loved and somehow turned himself into the victim. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "Then you can have her. You deserve each other. Both of you." He tried to say something else, but I opened the door and pointed. My voice was steady, cold. "Get out." When he finally left, slamming the door behind him, I sank onto bed, my chest heaving. I thought I'd feel relief, but instead I felt emptier than ever. The days turned into weeks, and I started to rebuild. I threw myself into work, stayed late at the office just to avoid going back to that motel room. I reconnected with old friends, people who hadn't seen me in years. I even started going to the gym again, pounding out my anger on the treadmill, trying to sweat out the poison inside me. But just when I thought I was finally finding my footing, Claire found me. She showed up outside my office one evening, her eyes red from crying, her face pale. I froze when I saw her, torn between the urge to turn around and the urge to scream. She stepped closer, her voice breaking. "Please," she whispered. "I made a mistake. I don't want him. I want you. Don't throw us away." I stared at her, my heart a battlefield between the love I once felt and the betrayal that had gutted me. And in that moment, I realized the story wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. When I saw Claire standing outside my office, It felt like time had folded in on itself. For a second, it was like nothing had changed, like she was just waiting to walk home with me after a long day. But then I remembered the motel, the messages, the lies whispered in the dark, and the illusion shattered. She stepped closer, reaching out for my hand, but I pulled away. The look in her eyes, desperation, mixed with guilt, would have broken me months ago. Now it just made me tired. "I don't love him," she said quickly, words spilling out like water from a broken dam. "It was a mistake, I swear. I got lost. I felt lonely. I thought you didn't care anymore. But I was wrong. I want us. I want what we had." Her voice cracked, and tears slid down her cheeks. The old me would have wiped them away, would have pulled her close and believed every word. But the man standing there now was different. "Do you know what you did to me?" I asked quietly. My voice shook, not from weakness, but from the weight of everything I had carried since that night. "You didn't just betray me. You made me question my own mind, my own worth. You took the two people I trusted most and turned them into strangers." She tried to protest, but I cut her off. "It's not about love anymore, Claire. It's about respect. And once you lose that, there's nothing left to save." She broke down then, sobbing in the middle of the sidewalk as people walked around us. Some stared, some didn't, but I couldn't care less. I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier but freer at the same time. Mark tried calling me again later that week, leaving messages about how he and Claire were over, how he regretted everything. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Some wounds don't heal just because someone says sorry. Months passed and slowly the ache dulled. I moved out of the motel and into a new place of my own. I filled it with furniture I actually liked, painted the walls myself, and for the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Looking back, I realized the betrayal had destroyed me, but it had also rebuilt me. I wasn't the same naive man who thought love and loyalty were unbreakable. I was stronger now. I trusted myself more than I ever had. And though the scars would always be there, they were proof that I had survived. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about them where they are, what they're doing, whether they still think about me. But those thoughts don't control me anymore. They don't define me, because in the end, the betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new one. And this time, I'm writing on my own terms.